Hello friends, welcome back to my channel. My name is Mar, and if you watched my video last week, you know that I have a lot of books on my fall TBR. So for this video, we're doing a physical TBR takedown, and I'm going to try to read as many books as I can this weekend. To just tackle some of the books that have been on my TBR. I feel like it's a pretty straightforward video. I'm just going to be sitting here reading the entire weekend, and we're just going to get through as many books as we can. So the first book that I am going to be tackling is Project Hail Mary by Andy Weir. I already made it to chapter 6 or 7, I believe, of this book, and so I thought this would just be a very good book to just get started with. This is a sci-fi book that has already been made into a movie featuring Mr. Ryan Gosling. And so pretty much the trailer keeps playing every time I go to the movies, and so I just kind of got sick of it because every time the trailer played, I would have to close my eyes because I simply just don't want spoilers going into this book. So we are going to try to get through this book this weekend. It is currently my watch is not on me right now. It is currently around 3:30 on Saturday afternoon. So we really got to get started with this. I'm also listening to the audiobook because a lot of people have recommended to listen to the audiobook, and honestly the audiobook is indeed eating right now. And so yeah, I'm going to just sit here and read this for a bit and update you my thoughts when I see fit. So it is currently 7 p.m. and I've made it to a bit more than 50% of the way through this book. And so I thought this would be a good time to just do a little update and share my thoughts on what I think of this book so far. And overall, the only thing I can really say is that I really wish this wasn't my next read after reading Catabasis. The last book I read was Catabasis, and that book in itself already gives you so much information that needs to go into your brain that with this one, it's like that, but even more because this has so much science and math in it and all of that, hence why this is a science fiction book. But at the same time, my brain is just information overload right now. But also the thing is, I can't stop reading this. I literally cannot stop reading this. The way Andy Weir writes, it's just very addicting. He makes everything super digestible and all of that. Don't get me wrong. But at the same time, so much information comes at you at once that it's sort of whoa, we gotta slow down. But again, I just can't stop reading because literally at the end of every chapter, there's something that makes me have to turn to the next page and figure out what's going on in the next chapter. I feel like a lot with the plot is like everything gets uncovered to you the same time everything gets uncovered to the protagonist. So like you and the protagonist of this book are in the same kind of headspace as to like what the heck is going on? Like, where are we? What are we doing here? How did we get here? Like, those are all the questions that are going through your brain and the character's brain at the same time. And so, like, every single time you flip the page, everything's a discovery. Everything is new information that is coming at you. And you're kind of just like, okay, we have this information now. What do we do with this? And so, at the same time, in this book, you do get like flashbacks. So, like, the main character will get a flashback. And so you're also like slowly trying to piece together kind of like how and why Rylan Grace, like what role he plays as to like why is he the one that gets sent into like this spaceship on this mission. And yeah, it's like you really can't say much because like everything after the first chapter is practically a spoiler. And so I can't say too much about this book, but other than that, I am like obsessed like with reading this, but at the same time my brain is like overloaded with so much information right now. I really do want to finish this book tonight. Not not that I'm like in any like or under any time constraints or anything like that. Like no, it's just I'm addicted to reading this that I don't want to put it down. So I've made it to 80% of the way through this book, and it is currently 9:20, and I think I'm going to stop here so when I wake up tomorrow I can just hop in and finish this and my brain won't feel like it's overloaded with information. I think that's the only like problem with reading this book is that like there's so much information happens that if your brain is not in it, it's simply not in it. And so it's gone to the point where my brain is kind of just like drifting off and thinking about other things. So that's where I kind of know where to stop. And I'm going to pick this up tomorrow and finish this. But I think for the rest of the night, I'm going to maybe start a different book, and I'll update you what that book is tomorrow. I will return to you tomorrow morning. I just finished reading Project Hail Mary by Andy Weir this morning, and so I thought I would come on here and share my thoughts and review of this book. And overall, I gave it a 4.75 stars. And so it didn't hit the 5-star mark for me because I fear I experienced right book, wrong time. Honestly, I enjoyed this book, but at the same time, I feel like I just read it at the wrong time because, like I mentioned before, I did just read Catabasis by R.F. Kuang, and that is a very academic, heavy book. And this book is very science heavy. And so the amount of information that is in my brain right now is a bit too much. And so there is just a lot of information in this book that gives it to you. And I fear I just like my brain kind of glossed over, I wouldn't say like a lot of it, but it just got to the point where I just felt like I had to take a break, a pause, or my mind drifted somewhere else. But that isn't to say that like this book was bad or anything like that. This book was actually really fun to read. I really love the characters that we meet in this book. The protagonist, the way he tells a story is very, very witty, very funny. There's a lot of humor to it, even though like the situation that he is in is a situation I would say most of us would not want to be in that situation, if that makes sense. Or I don't know, maybe you have an interest in going to space and, researching other life forms out there. Overall, I thought the writing of this was very, very fun. And I think why a lot of people recommend the audiobook more than the actual book itself is that obviously there's like a bunch of like special effects. The way it's told is very good, but I think it just makes it a bit more digestible, especially for people who, haven't touched science like the last time they touched science was literally high school, aka me. I am someone who I love science. I love learning about, chemistry, biology, physics, and all that. It's just I don't have that brain that can just store it. The scientific parts of it were super like fun. It's just, again, right book, wrong time. And so I think the way that this book is also written, just like narratively, is very interesting, and structurally it is also interesting. When you first pick up this book, you and the protagonist are pretty much, you're both lost. You don't know where you are, you don't know who you are, you don't know what's happening. You're on this spaceship and you're trying to pretty much figure out what is going on. And then as the book unfolds, it jumps in between flashbacks and then the current plot as well. There are different things in the current plot that trigger these flashbacks in this. You're kind of getting little pieces of the puzzle as to kind of why he got sent up to space and all that as the book goes on. I thought that like thematically, the different situations and the different, morals and ethics behind these decisions as to, are you going to do this for the greater good, or are you going to do this for yourself? Like there's a lot of things thematically that are brought up in this book as well that are also very interesting, and I wish we could have leaned into those thematic elements a bit more. I think this book was definitely trying to balance the sci-fi elements of things and sort of just like the otherworldly experience that this protagonist is having, but also like thinking about like the ethics and the morals and the impact it has on earth and humanity and all of that thing. I wish it kind of explored that a bit more. But yeah, overall I personally really like the plot. I liked the characters. I think the characters were definitely a standout in this book because there's, the main protagonist, he's a very likable guy. Like you can't help but like and kind of empathize with his situation. There's another character that you also comes into play in this book that like literally you would do anything to protect this character. And so that's what I really liked about Project Hail Mary. I enjoyed reading this book. I thought this was a great book. It's just I read it at the wrong time. And so I think that also kind of reflects this review as well. But now that I've read this book, I can finally watch the freaking trailer to this book. So I am going to go do that now. And then I will return to you when I decide to read my next book. So the next book I'm going to be picking up is The Academy by Hilderbrand, and I actually did start this last night, and I think this is just the perfect kind of palate cleanser book that I need. Pretty much from the gist of what I got from the first few chapters, I ended up getting to chapter 5. The initial premise of this book is pretty much it's about this boarding school named Tiffin Academy. It has this reputation of like any other like typical boarding school. A lot of the students that go there are, the sons and daughters of very rich people, and all of that are people with a lot of power. Some of them, are like fashion designers, others are like, I believe, like political figures and all that. The reputation of Tiffin Academy is that it's like any other boarding school. And so every time it gets ranked, it's usually on the lower end of like the boarding schools across America. But for this year or whatever, it ends up ranking number 2. And so everyone is surprised. The headmaster or whatever is very surprised by this. But at the same time, a lot has gone on at this school that they are still trying to recover from. The main one being the death of one of like the star students and all of that happened the previous year before. And so it was like ruled as very much like a sewer slide. So you're pretty much taken through the point of views of a lot of different characters that go to the school, some being faculty, others being students, and then there's also a new student that arrives at this academy that kind of takes the place of the old student that died. You get to follow a lot of the different characters in this book and all of that, and so there hasn't been any like mysterious like plot or anything that has really been brought up yet in the chapters. The first couple chapters is you really just understanding, kind of this academy, how it operates, the characters in it, and then I think the plot will kind of pick up in a bit. I've pretty much been enjoying this. Like, this is something that I think I really need. And also, one thing about me is my guilty pleasure is rich people and their problems. And so I know this is probably going to hit the spot for me. So I'm going to continue reading this and I'll let you know my thoughts a bit later on. I thought I'd give you an update. I am currently a bit more than 30% of the way through this book right now. Overall, I'm having a really good time reading it. I think this is the perfect fall book to read, especially if you just want, something that has a lot of drama and secrets. It's not necessarily a mystery novel or anything to say that, but it is more so of a literary fiction, I would say, of just like this boarding school, and all of the different characters and how they all see themselves and this boarding school and all of that, and how they have to present themselves and all that to other people, which is what I find very interesting. Right now, not too much has happened. I think right now we're just learning everyone's secrets and everyone's kind of inner thoughts and how they see themselves in specific situations and all of that, but I really can't say too much. I think reading this book is very much, you just kind of have to accept the stuff that's going on right now, because let's just say everyone in here is messy. But this does give such like fall, autumn vibes and all of that. Like, I would say the students in here are probably just as messy as like the teens in Pretty Little Liars. Maybe not to the Alison De Laurentiis level of crazy, but like still kind of crazy. But like, don't get it twisted that this is anything like Pretty Little Liars at all. This is just people making some very interesting decisions with each other and feeling like they have to hide a lot of what they do and all that at the school, because the school does have a reputation that it needs to uphold. I'm having a pretty good time reading it. I have had to take some breaks just because I think I am trying to digest more of what I read and all that, so I am reading at very much a slower pace than I normally would. But let me just say, like, I put on a Gilmore Girls playlist, and that just like very much kind of helps set the tone of this book and all of that. So yeah, if you're looking for a fall read with a lot of interesting characters, I would say check out this book. I am 60% of the way through the Academy right now, and it has gone to the point where I'm now eating this up. It's The only way I can really describe this is what the Gossip Girl reboot wanted to be, if that makes sense. In the second part of the book, which this isn't a spoiler because it is on the back of the book, pretty much this random like social media app appears, and I guess it's this social media app that has been popularized in a lot of other boarding schools and all that. It comes to Tiffin, and it and this app, and the person who controls this app is pretty much sharing all of these different secrets of the students and faculty at this boarding school, and pretty much everyone's secrets are getting shared. Everyone is confused. Nobody knows who the person is controlling this app and all of that. And so, like, so much stuff is happening in this book with all of like the different characters. And so, a lot of things get revealed about specific characters and all of that. And let me just say, the characters in this book, they're all pretty messy. Like, there are some characters that I understand more than others as to some of the things that they do and to some of like the secrets they keep. Like there are some that I understand more than others. There are some that I'm just like, now why would you do that? Why would you make that decision? And I think that's what's so fun about reading this book. But yeah, I'm 60% of the way through, and I believe that this captures an entire year at the boarding school, so, or the entire school year more specifically. But the way it's told, it's very unique in the sense that like each chapter is almost like told narratively through like one or two of the characters. Usually it's one character, but if the second character kind of has like a plot that interweaves with the first one, then it's like sometimes it's like two to three. But I think this is just like a really interesting book, and it's definitely up my alley. Again, I love books about rich people and their problems. That is my guilty pleasure, and so I'm eating this up. I do think it is for a specific type of person. Again, like I wouldn't go into this expecting a whole like thriller mystery esque vibe to it. I would definitely like it is more toned back, the mystery part of it and all that, but for the most part, I'm really liking this. I'm 60% of the way through, and I'm pretty sure I'll probably finish this tonight. I will be back and updating you guys my thoughts when I can. Hey Bookies, I'm back with an update, and it literally looks like I'm reporting to you guys at like 10 p.m. Guys, it's literally 7:30. It's literally 7:30, and the sun's already going down, and so we had to bring out the other lights and all of that. But I wanted to let you guys know that last night I ended up finishing The Academy by Elin Hilderbrand. I thought I would share my thoughts and review about this book with you guys. And honestly, I had a very fun time reading this book. I gave this a 4.25 stars. And I think for me, this was just like the perfect palate cleanser, especially after reading so many books that had so much information and all that, that like I really had to work the muscles in my brain. Reading this was just, it was super digestible, and the story and the plot was very intriguing to me. But with that being said, I feel like this is for a very like niche group of people. And so, if you're expecting going into this that you think that there's going to be a big mystery, or like you like, or like unhinged drama, like for example, like in Gossip Girl, I don't think you're gonna get it from this one. Like this one, I feel like the drama, there are some things that are a little bit out there, but at the same time, a lot of the drama feels like very realistic. Like it feels like, like it could possibly happen in the real world and all that. There definitely are like plot points, but if you're looking for like an overarching like narrative plot where like events happen that lead to like more events and this and that, it's not really like that. It's very much, it just feels like you're taking a glimpse into like this picture perfect like boarding school, and you're ripping back a lot of like the different layers it has when it comes to the people there, the students there, like all of the relationships within this ecosystem of a boarding school. People being messy most of the time voluntarily. I would say in this book, there are a lot of unlikable characters, but you come to understand a lot of them. But I feel like if you are not in the mood to understand or like try to understand how these characters think and operate, I don't think you would like this book. I feel like with this one, there is kind of some more critical thinking that you need to have when it comes to just how, like, why the characters make specific decisions, even though objectively everyone knows that the decisions that they make are bad decisions. I feel like if you don't have the patience to do that, you probably won't like this book. I feel like this, again, is for a very like niche audience. And if you don't like reading books about rich people and their problems, then this probably isn't the book for you. Like, but again, for me, that is one of the things that I love in books for some reason. I don't know where that stems from. I just like love reading like this like snowball effect of things, especially when it comes to like a small thing that like literally at the end of the day doesn't matter. But yeah, I rated this a 4.25 stars. I like the characters. I like the plot of it and all that. Were there some storylines that gave me the ick? Oh, absolutely, but I still enjoyed reading about it. I can see why a lot of people like to read Ellen Hilderbrand, especially during the summer. Like her books do give kind of like chill, like beach read and all that, but with like a little bit of a twist, a little bit of drama, a little bit of suspense and all that. But it's not like the overarching theme of these books, you know. I think this book is very much just like contemporary fiction. It's sort of just like, you know, here's here's a boarding school, watch things unfold. And that's kind of the vibe it gives. And so, yeah, those are my thoughts on The Academy by Ellen Hilderbrand. And oh yeah, this is also written by her daughter, Shelby Cunningham, which I also did not mention, but good for her though. Like I can definitely tell that her daughter had a lot of say, especially when it came to a lot of like the Gen Z slang and pop culture references and all of that. Like it definitely felt very natural. Like it didn't feel forced at all. Anyways, those are all of my thoughts on this book, and let's get into the next one that I want to read. I decided to change up the angle just a little bit. The next book I started to read after I finished The Academy is Immortal Consequences by Ivy Marie. And I read the first part. This book is separated into like different parts and all that. So I read the first part, which contains like, I believe, 3 or 4 chapters. I think from what I've read so far, I think this is going to be one of my favorite books of this year. Maybe it depends how this ends. It depends how where this takes us. But I really like the writing of this. I really like the characters. Just I really like the concept. I just like there's everything in this that like I really like. And so I definitely think I'm the target audience for this specific book. This is a YA dark academia fantasy paranormal-ish, I guess, book. Pretty much it's about this boarding school that is kind of in like purgatory, so the realm between the living and the dead. All of these students that go to this boarding school ended up dying in like the real world, and instead of immediately being transported to like the underworld or hell or whatever, they get transported to this boarding school, and at this boarding school they get a chance to they learn magic and all that, specifically like the magic that works in this realm of purgatory. And pretty much each year one student is nominated in this ceremony celebration called the decennial. If they're nominated, they get to choose what they want to do after. Like, do they want to become a teacher for this school? Do they want to go to a different realm? They get to decide. You know, they get to leave this boarding school. And the thing with this boarding school is that only 500 students are allowed. So when a new student joins, one student has to leave, or a lot of the times what happens is that an older student will start to lose their memories, and then they're forced into the soul keeping area or something, where pretty much they're just like an empty shell of like a human being. They don't have any memories. They're just there to collect souls or herd souls, like cheap. Every single student here wants to be nominated for the decennial because they don't want to be stuck at boarding school for like hundreds and hundreds of years. They want to move on with their lives, but with only one student being nominated, obviously it gets competitive, especially when new students are joining every year or 2 years or whatever. And so, yeah, that is like the overall kind of vibe of this book. And I am very proud of myself that I was able to summarize that. Look at me go. Usually I'm umming and ahhing, but that's how you know that this is gripping me, is that I understand. I know what's going on. There's 6 characters and each one of them narrates a chapter or whatever. And so they're all very interesting characters. Obviously, there are ones that I think I connect to more than others. For like the writing of this book, it gives very much like the same energy as the book Curious Tides. I forget the the name of that trilogy or whatever, but it's Curious Tides by Pascal Lassalle. That was like one of my 5-star reads 2 years ago. And it's also, that series is also young adult, dark academia and all that. So I think that why dark academia just hits for me. I don't know what it is about the genre, but I'm super excited to continue reading this. I just know that this is probably going to be up my alley, but I also think it's for a very specific group of individuals to read this. Also, guys, guess what came in the mail today? My copy of Dire Bound. Like, guys, I literally ordered this at like 10 p.m. last night, and I was like, okay, this will probably get here like during the weekend. I could read this during the weekend. No, I literally look at my phone this morning while I'm at work and I look down and it's like package out for delivery. And I was like, what the heck? So I'm super excited to read this. This might be my next read. I don't know what it is about, like, I have so many books on my TBR, and yet the ones I want to read are the ones that literally appear like in my mailbox. Like, is it recency bias or whatever? But I don't know. This is like the struggle. This is a struggle of being a mood reader. But yeah, I'm super excited to start this as well. Also, I didn't realize how thick this was. And also, the font is very small. But I do think the chapters are short. So that you'll win some, you'll lose some. But, anyways, I'm going to start reading this. And I'll let you know my thoughts when I decide to update you. Tell me why. I fear, like, I fear this may be one of my 5-star reads of this year if it continues at the momentum that it's going at right now. I've only just started getting into the action and a bit more of the juicy stuff that's happening in this book, but I am hooked. I cannot stop reading. I cannot put this down. Literally, I went to work today and all I was thinking was, I literally cannot wait to go home and read this book. And so, yeah, I currently made it to part 3 of this book so far. And just everything about it is what I personally like. It just contains all of the elements I personally love to see in the books I read and all of that. And so I've been pleasantly surprised going into this. And I also feel like it's just because I don't know much about this book that really I'm just here to enjoy the ride and see where it's heading and all of that. And so I do see elements, though, of a lot of my favorite books in this. So I feel like that's also partially why I am biased to this book already, in that a lot of the characters, in a way, are familiar to my favorite characters in other books that I've read, but also, like, I really like the relationships. I really like the characterization of all the characters in this book as well. Like, there are tons, like, don't get me wrong. There are quite a bit of characters, but it's manageable. And each of them, I would say, have very defining features and personalities and all that, that it's not hard to differentiate them. But what I find so interesting though is that in this book there is a competition trials aspect to it, and usually I am not the biggest fan of that trope. I am not the biggest fan of that type of plot in a book, especially if it's not well done. But for this one, it's gotten me hooked just because it's done in a little bit of a different way than a lot of them do. This book is giving me what I thought Powerless by Lauren Roberts was going to give me, if that makes sense. Like, I'm not the biggest fan of Powerless, but this book, like, this is just giving me everything that I needed and more, I guess, because I cannot stop reading it. And am I maybe overhyping this book a bit too much? Absolutely. But again, this is my channel. And so I feel like, again, this is a very acquired taste. I don't think everyone is going to love this book, but there are definitely different elements of things that I personally really enjoy. And I mean this in like the best way possible, but like this book is low-key giving Goblet of Fire, like Harry Potter Goblet of Fire, and there definitely are some Harry Potter elements to this book. Like I can definitely tell that there has been some inspiration pulled from Harry Potter in this sense. But honestly, yeah, I would too. I have been eating this up. The action is there, the stakes are there. All of my favorite elements of like some of my favorite books are in this one. And so, yeah, again, like those again, these are my thoughts. This is my opinion. Again, I haven't even made it to 50%, so that could also, my opinions could also change by the time I get to 50%. But I really do think that this is going to be a 5-star read for me unless something happens in the last like end of this book that genuinely destroys me. But I cannot wait to read this book more and let you know my thoughts. Sorry, I stand corrected. I am at part 4 of this book, and so I'm actually closer to 50%, and I've been eating this up. So my mistake. Anyways, I'm gonna continue reading, and I will let you know my thoughts closer to probably like 80% of the way, or 75 to 80% of the way into this book. So I'm a little bit more than 60% of the way into this book, and I am obsessed, and I literally am putting this down right now because I know if I don't, I will be reading this into the night, and I need to get a good like 7-8 hours of sleep. Unfortunately, I love my sleep, but I'm so addicted to reading this book, and so much has happened in like the past like part of this book that I cannot form words, and I really want to come on here and yap about this book some more to you guys. I'm not going to do that, but I truly am obsessed with this book, and to think that this is a debut novel of this author, like personally to me, I'm just so immersed in it that it's truly amazing me. And like, is this an original book? Not really, but I'm having such a good time reading it. The vibes are good. I'm immersed in the story. I am engaged with all the characters, and like literally like a little movie in my mind is forming every single time I pick up this book. So yeah, but I wanted to give that update, and I'll return to you guys tomorrow with some more updates surrounding this. Sorry for this weird glare. I have a light up here, but I am going to try and finish Immortal Consequences tonight. I have a mug of hot chocolate, and I'm going to listen to some Dark Academia ambience while I try and finish this up. I only have around, I would say like a bit more than 30% left, which is fine, and this is a pretty quick read. So yeah, I just thought I'd update you, and I'm also just going to film myself reading. Anyways, yeah, let's get reading. So, it is a few days later since from when I updated you, and now your girl has bangs. I went and got a haircut this morning because your girl really needed it, and I really also missed having bangs. And so, yeah, the girls are back. Thought I would come on here and do a quick review of Immortal Consequences. I finished this the other night, and I have been waiting to talk about it. I've just been waiting to look decent enough to talk about it. And so the time has finally come, and let's jump straight into it. I gave this a 5 stars. As you could probably tell throughout the entire vlog, I feel like I spoke very highly of this book, and I also fear that I might be hyping this book up a bit too much. This is for a very niche audience, I would say. And it just so happens that I am in that target audience. This book definitely scratched an itch that was in my brain that it just simply hadn't been scratched this year. This book definitely reads a bit more YA. So if you know you don't like YA books, this probably isn't for you. But you are told the story through 6 different characters, and their stories interconnect with each other because of what's known as the decennial, which is sort of like this trial that happens and all that in this academy. There's a lot in this book that becomes revealed at the end that I cannot talk about just simply because of spoilers. Overall, how I felt about this book, I personally really like the characters. Even though there's a ton of characters, I feel like there was enough information for each of them in which you could connect with them. The only thing that I kind of had a problem with was because this is a YA book and it reads very YA, a lot of the characters in this book have been dead for at least 100 years or so, and they very much talk like teenagers still. And I don't know if that was necessarily intentional or not. It's sort of like the kind of situation you have, I guess, when you're reading any kind of supernatural book, especially paranormal books where there are teenagers that are ghosts or vampires or whatever. They kind of just stay stagnant in that time frame that they are, and so no matter how old they are, they'll always talk like teenagers and all that, if that makes sense. That's kind of the vibes of the characters in this book. There are a lot of characters in this book that have been alive for hundreds of years at least, and they still act like teenagers, and they still have those rebellious phases. I was willing to overlook it in this book. And then next for plot and all of that, I personally really like the plot of this book. I like the trials aspect of it. I thought it was really well done in this book. I am not someone who loves trials. It has to be written well, and I thought it was written pretty well in this book. I do think the plot picked up a bit too quick in the end of the book because there's just a lot of twists and turns that happen. There are a lot of reveals that happen, and I feel like these reveals came on almost a bit too quick. I know for sure that there's going to be a second book in this series. I don't know if it's going to be a duology or trilogy or whatever, but I feel like a lot of the reveals from this book could have been pushed to the second book. It just felt very sudden at the end of this one. That was really the only problem I had with the plot, is that it just moved way too fast for my liking. There were moments where we could have drawn it out a bit more, but I understand that since this is YA and the target audience definitely is more on the younger end, that I see why it's a bit more quick and fast moving. So yeah, and then as for the dark academia, fantasy elements, vibe, and all of that, I personally really enjoyed it. Considering that this is an academy in purgatory and all that, it's very interesting to sort of see how the author built up this world and, the different rules in this book. Since the characters are dead and all that, they don't necessarily feel pain, but once they are chosen to take part in the trials, there are like the things that they face in the trials actually like bring them pain and can actually kill them, which is a very interesting thing and a very interesting concept. And so I personally really enjoyed the fantasy, like supernatural elements to it. I thought it was really well done. And it also very much gave that like gothic, dark academia, like boarding school vibes. Like I thought the writing of the environment of that was done really well. One more thing that I was on the fence about is the antagonists of this book. The antagonists probably are the weakest part of this book. And I feel like it's just because there's so much world building and character development that needs to happen throughout the book that the characters or the antagonists in a way kind of take a back seat in this book, but that there's something dark and creepy and like mysterious underlying throughout this entire book that is probably going to get addressed more in the second book. So yeah, but as you can tell, I will definitely be picking up the second book of this whenever it comes out. I personally really enjoyed it. So yeah, if you want that YA dark academia fantasy romance vibes itch scratched in your brain, I would definitely suggest you go pick this up. Otherwise, you can probably skip it if you know that it's not going to be your vibe. But yeah, that is my review of Immortal Consequences, and I'm so excited that I was able to find a 5-star book for this video. Switching the angle just a little bit, but the last book I think I'm going to be picking up for this video specifically is Direbound by Sable Sorensen, and I've actually started reading this and I've made it to around 35% of the way through this book already. And I picked this book up primarily because a lot of the TikTok girlies were saying that this is giving that itch Fourth Wing gave and all that. Like it's filling the void of if you're looking for another book that's similar to Fourth Wing and all of that. And so that's primarily the reason why I picked this up. It's described as Fourth Wing, but with wolves and all that. And so I'm a sucker for anything wolf related. And so I had to pick this up. I had to get my hands on it. And from the 35% that I've read so far, I definitely see the Fourth Wing vibes. I definitely see what the TikTok girlies, the book talk girlies are saying about this, but also there are enough differences that it's not an exact carbon copy of Fourth Wing at all. Like there are definitely similar elements, and I would say structurally it is similar. So if you liked Fourth Wing and you want another book that's very much similar to it, I would suggest you do pick this up. But at the same time, there's enough elements to differentiate it. I do like the main character, and I think that the motivations of the main character I understand a lot more than Violet from Fourth Wing. Like, I would describe this book as like Fourth Wing with wolves. Also, if Rebecca Yarros knew how to get to the point quicker. Because one thing about me is that like I like Fourth Wing. I love the first book. I think it was really fun, and it definitely scratched that itch that a lot of fantasy books like really haven't been like giving a lot of people. I thought it was just like a really fun book to read. Iron Flame and Onyx Storm, I have more mixed feelings about simply just because Iron Flame is kind of what shook up the series a bit, and then it also shook up Rebecca Yarros in that I don't think she knew exactly what direction she was going to until she got to Onyx Storm. But even with Onyx Storm, I still have mixed feelings about. I still didn't love that book as much as I loved the first book. But yeah, I feel like this is just Fourth Wing, but if Rebecca Yarros knew how to get to the point quicker. The problem I have with Fourth Wing is that a lot of scenes just feel very drawn out. And one thing about Rebecca Yarros is that she gets too detailed when she writes these scenes, which sometimes it's good. She's very good at describing the characters and the environment around the characters, but when it comes to the actual plot, she mentions so many details that it simply gets to a point where I do not care. One thing about Rebecca Yarros is that she will mention every single name of a minor character, and especially a character that gets killed off. She'll introduce a new character, and immediately that character will get killed off in the next chapter. And it's simply like, why did I need to know their name? Why did I need to know their entire family history only for them to get killed off in the next chapter? Like, that is simply information that could have just happened without me knowing, especially if there's no emotional appeal to it. Like that's kind of the problem I have with Rebecca Yarros, is that she includes a lot of information that for editing purposes could really get like edited out, like that could really get cut out, and it wouldn't affect the overall story in itself. And so with this one moves a lot faster. We don't get the names of random characters that get killed off like immediately. If they do get introduced, they're introduced for a reason. So those are my thoughts 30% of the way, 35% of the way going in. Again, this book moves a lot quicker than Fourth Wing, and there's also a lot of twists and turns and all that, but at the same time there are so many elements that are very similar to Fourth Wing. I'm going to continue reading this and I will update you when I update you. I've made it to chapter 25 of Direbound, and I thought I would come on here and share my thoughts because I most likely am going to be reading as much of this as I can tonight and then try to finish this tomorrow. And so I wanted to kind of sit with my thoughts on this book for a bit now that I've gotten a little bit into it since I last talked about it. And overall, it's starting to pick up and things are starting to happen a bit more. I think plot-wise, again, this has a lot of comparison to Fourth Wing, which I honestly don't mind. When I read it, I feel like it's its own story and it has its own world, and I can picture it very, like, vividly, and I'm not thinking, like, oh, this happened in Fourth Wing, or, oh, this happened in Fourth Wing, like, there's enough differences that let me allow myself to be immersed in this other world, and I'm so sorry I keep bringing up that book. It's just, once book talk kind of markets you something, it just kind of sticks in your head because we're cooked in this generation of consuming media and literature. Speaking of being cooked, the one thing that confuses me about this book is that, especially now with romantasy, I feel like a lot of settings very much inspired by definitely like older Europe, like European countries. It's very sometimes like gothic, or it's like everything is described as like a castle almost, and all of these worlds are very, in a way, described a bit more as like high fantasy. I would say they're in older buildings that have a lot of history. What confuses me more is just like the language being used in these types of books, in that there's a lot of like Gen Z slang, I would say, or like a lot of phrases that Gen Z uses, or like that people nowadays use. Like literally the phrase "I'm cooked" has appeared in this book, and that kind of took me aback because I was like, where are we right now? Like, why are we using the words "I'm cooked"? Like, I feel like we could be a little bit more creative when it comes to the internal dialogue of characters. That's another thing I kind of have an opinion on, just like about this book, is that like the internal dialogue of this character, because it's first person, it feels written very much toward like a more modern audience of like this generation. That's kind of what's taking me out of this world, is that sometimes I'll just come across like phrases or like sentences of just like references and all of that, or like modern day references that we would use like nowadays, rather than like, I'm just like, would people say "I'm cooked" in this world? Like, would people, like, social media doesn't exist, like, is that like a common phrase in this world? Like, what is that? Like, that's the only thing that kind of like is making me annoyed with this book. Like, this isn't an urban fantasy at all. So yeah, that's kind of my thoughts on the writing of this, at least. Not to say that like the writing's like horrible or anything, but sorry, I didn't get to finish my point there because I got interrupted by my family. What I'm trying to say is that also for me personally, I have noticed that I like to read books that are written in the third person versus the first person, and I think that just having that preference has also like influenced how I see this book and how this book has been written and my overall thoughts of this book. So yeah, that's what I wanted to say. I didn't get a chance to read a lot this evening, so I'm going to try to read it. I'm going to try to read as much as I can before bed, and I will update you guys tomorrow. So I am now at the last like 30% of this book, and I simply could not put this down yesterday. Based off of when I started reading again, it picked up. The second half definitely picked up compared to the first half of this book, and so I simply could not put this down. I had to force myself to stop reading this. Otherwise, I'm pretty sure I would have stayed up all night trying to finish this, but I'm very much enjoying it. I think that like right now where we are in the plot, things are picking up, and it's a really, really fun read so far. And I think that there has also been a lot of character development that has happened within the past couple chapters that, you know, make a lot of sense. And so yeah, I am going to continue reading this book. I made myself a coffee, which I usually never do. I do not love drinking coffee, but I needed the energy to pick up with my day, and then I'm going to read as much of this as I can and then give you my review. I am listening to Direbound theme playlist and like some wolf ambiance playlists and all that, and I think that's also elevating my read. And so yeah, I'm going to continue reading this book. I might film myself reading the ending, and then I'm going to give my book review. This has definitely scratched that romantasy itch that I didn't know my brain had, but I'm actually happy to like jump back into a romantasy book after not reading some for a bit. I knew it. I knew it. Sorry, I only have like 15% left, but I knew it. I saw one of the twists coming. I just had to say so. I had to be right. But yeah. Okay, I have 2 more chapters left, and then I'll do my book review. if you could not tell by the reaction I had, I just finished Direbound by Sable Sorensen, and honestly, this surprised me more than it should have. I was actually very pleasantly surprised by how this book ended. And I feel like at the beginning, while reading this, I was a bit more critical going into it just because I know how Book Talk likes to market things, and everything that's recommended to me by Book Talk, I try to take with a grain of salt. And so I go into these books with very low expectations because I just don't know what to expect. Because again, everyone's opinions on the different books are subjective. And so sometimes, when you hear all of this rumbling from, a very big community about a different book, sometimes it might not reflect the same to your own personal experience while reading it. But I just have to say, I was pleasantly surprised with how the last bit of this book ended. Let's just get into the book review. I did end up rating this 5 stars. And I think it's just cuz the vibes were good, and again, I had a very good time reading this. I was engaged and I was entertained the entire time, and I think that's how I really rate my 5-star books. Did I have criticisms over a bit of the writing of this book? Absolutely. But I think for a debut novel that is also indie published, I think that this was a very strong start to a book. And yeah, so I ended up rating this 5 stars. I know from a more objective lens that might be a bit too high for some people, but overall, this is my subjective opinion. And I personally gave this a 5 stars just simply because I had a good time while reading it. I thought I connected with the characters. I really liked the plot, and I love the twists and turns that happen. Was this a bit predictable? Absolutely. But I think, anytime going into romantasy now, a lot of the books are like the same but like different fonts. Usually for my book reviews, again, I like to break it down into categories. And so the first category, let's talk about the plot, actually. Let's start with the plot. I feel like for this book, while vlogging, I never actually explained to you guys what this book is about. And so let's get into that. So, pretty much, this book is this girl named Marin Cooper. And pretty much, she lives with her single mom and little sister in almost like this area in this world that's almost like the slums, I would guess, or like it's the hood. Her father was a soldier or like a guard for the king. In this world, there are the direbound, which are people who work for the king who are bonded to dire wolves, and then their enemies are these vampire like people called siphons. And so pretty much they've been at war with the siphons for however many years, and so pretty much a lot of people enlist in the guard to protect their world from the siphons and all that. When she's young, her father ends up dying because of the siphons and all of that. And so pretty much she's had to support her mom and her sister her entire like teenage life. I don't really know how old she is in this. I believe she's in her 20s. Her mom has like this illness, that makes her have like that makes her hallucinate and like makes her talk crazy and all that. And then her little sister's only like 10 years old. She really is trying to protect her sister though, because in the neighborhood that she lives in, it is a neighborhood where the siphons try and kidnap kids in that neighborhood. The siphons, they like the children's blood because it's a lot more powerful than I guess like adult blood and all that, because they live in the slums, I guess, or whatever. Like it's easier to take children because there just aren't many guards around or anything. There's no one there to protect them, and so children have been going missing like for like months on end and all of that. And so one day, obviously, Marin's little sister Selah gets taken, and that kind of starts Marin's journey as to trying to get her back. The only way she thinks she can get Sayla back is if she enlists in the guard, because they go up against Siphons. She thinks that she'll find a way to get her sister back, if she can kind of find leads to the Siphons and all that. When you enlist in the guard, usually they'll let you go enlist in the front, which is like the army, I guess. But for this year, it ends up being the dire wolf trials. So every few years, the dire wolves spawned with new recruits and all of that. So she ends up taking place in these trials, to these deadly, like, dire wolf bonding trials. She gets forced to take part in the bonding trials. And so, yeah, so pretty much that's where the majority of the book takes place, is the bonding trials in this sort of like again, military academy, similar to Fourth Wing, but also very different. And so, yeah, you uncover a lot of secrets. There's a lot of twists and turns, and that's really the, I guess, main plot of Direbound. And so, yeah, for plot wise, I did see a lot of elements and like similarities to Fourth Wing. So it wasn't the most like surprising plot or anything. It was very predictable, but it was also very satisfying at the end, because there definitely are a lot of changes and all that from Fourth Wing. So it doesn't feel like you're reading like a carbon copy of the book at all, but it does have very similar elements to it. But overall, I really like the plot. I really like the action, and I am usually someone who doesn't love a trial aspect part of like books and all that, especially in fantasy books. But for this one, I truly didn't mind it because it was pretty well done. And I feel like with this book as well, it was very well paced. It didn't feel like things were dragging on for too long. There are definitely hints and like puzzle pieces and all that are sprinkled throughout this book for you to pay attention to. And so I feel like there are a lot of breadcrumbs that you pick up along the way. It isn't the most like original story, I would say, but if you're looking to scratch that like romantasy itch that, Fourth Wing sort of gives and all that, I would highly recommend this book. As for characters, I personally really liked Marin as a female character. I feel like a lot of in okay, in a lot of romantasy books, the female main characters are always like the same, but in like, again, in a different font. Like, I feel like, to me, especially like characters like Feyre and Violet from Fourth Wing, like they are pretty much like the same character, but in a different font. Whereas I feel like Marin is definitely closer to a character to like Selena Sardothian from Throne of Glass. So if you like a very strong female main character who doesn't like to take shit from anyone, highly recommend this book, because Marin is definitely that character. I think, a lot of this book, she's uncovering a lot of things about this world that she never got to learn growing up and all of that, which is very interesting. And I really liked her as a character. And I feel like all of her motivations I understood. Like, to me, she was likable enough that when she did make mistakes, I wasn't like rolling my eyes and being like, girl, like, be so for real right now. For me, whenever she made a mistake, it made sense in the context of the book. I really like to see her character growth in this book. Personally, really like the female main character, and I feel like she's definitely also a character that I feel like a lot of people will be conflicted about. I know some people will love her and others will probably hate her. But yeah, I really liked her as a character. And then there definitely are a lot of supporting characters that you also come to understand them enough. Like, I do think the authors could have leaned in to bringing the supporting characters in a bit more, but this one definitely is more about Marin's journey. So I hopefully in the second book we get more characterization of those secondary characters and all of that. I think what Fourth Wing does very well, and I'm so sorry I keep bringing up Fourth Wing, but I think Fourth Wing kind of jumps more into the found family dynamic a bit faster, where this one is more so like Marin is definitely a lone wolf. Like, she doesn't want like anyone to be her friend. She's very much like, she keeps everyone an arm distance away. And as this book slowly, as things start to unravel more and more, she realizes that she does need to be a part of a pack. For character wise, I like the character development that happens. I like the dynamic and relationships between other characters in this book. And so I'm very excited to pick up the second book. As for the writing itself, again, like, there were some things with the writing that I was like very like unsure about, but again, this is an indie published book, and this is a debut novel for Sable Sorensen, which, by the way, is the pen name for two authors, actually. So two people wrote this book, very similar to how like Christina Lauren, how they write books together. There are two authors under the pen name of Sable Sorensen. So I think that also plays a role in just like how tight this book is. Like, I feel like everything, again, was very well paced. Like, things didn't drag on for too long. Like, you got the information that you needed, and then or like the information or the like pivotal points in this like book, you got it when it was needed, and then you moved on to the next thing, and you moved on to the next thing, and things didn't feel like it dragged out for too long. I thought the pacing was really well done in this book. And like, again, compared to Fourth Wing, I feel like Fourth Wing, a lot of things got drawn out a bit more. And the thing with Rebecca Yarros is that she loves including so many details that she doesn't know what to cut out. And I feel like the editor she has, like, they also don't know what to cut out. I always found the pacing to be so uneven, or we'd get like the same argument over and over again. Where this one, it was sort of like you you get the gist of it, you know the relationship between the characters, you know what things they're facing, and then you move on to the next, you move on to the next thing, you move on to the next trial, you move on to the next, part where characterization needs to happen, or character development needs to happen, or a specific part of a relationship needs to happen. And I personally really enjoyed the pacing of this book. Hopefully for the second book there is going to be a bit more editing, and I really hope the authors take their time, because I know with Direbound, because now that it's in the orbit of TikTok, people are going to want the second book a lot faster. And I already know that they have a release date for the second book, but I really hope they took their time with the second book and really just thought about plot characterization going forward after the first book, because the first book ends off on a really strong cliffhanger. And I feel like just the way a lot of romantasy books go, the second books are usually always weaker, and it can, from there it can either go worse or better. And so I really hope they're taking their time with the second one. I am like literally willing to wait if they need to go through like editorial changes or whatever. Like, I am willing to wait for the second book as long as they need, because I personally really like this book. I was immersed in the world the entire time. Again, I don't know how many books are going to be in this series. I don't know if it's, I don't believe this is a duology. I think at most it would be a trilogy. I think at the least it would be a trilogy, but who knows? But overall, I had a really fun time reading this. If you want a romantasy read to pick up, I would highly suggest Direbound. I think I'm going to be ending my TBR takedown video here. I ended up finding two five-star books within this reading vlog, which is super exciting. Thank you so much for watching this. If this introduced you to any books that you are interested in or are now interested in, let me know how you think of them in the comments below. And I will see you in my next vlog. Bye!